You're listening to I Communicate with your host, Mark Altman, on Full Service Radio, AM 830 WCRN. Once again, here's Mark.
Okay, here we are back on I Communicate, Finding Your Voice. And Melissa, are we going to make any New Year's resolutions this year? Are we done with New Year's resolutions?
I've got my dreaming tree loaded in the office.
Really?
I haven't told you about this. So we all have 10 non-negotiable goals every year.
Wow.
And they're all hanging on a tree. And the goal is to get them all down into whatever it's going to be that signifies done.
I want to know why you're on the air. What is your non-negotiable goal?
So this year I'm learning to speak Spanish.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're going to be bilingual.
Yes.
That's tremendous.
Yes.
Okay, very good. My non-negotiable goal is to get back to working out on a regular basis.
There you go.
At least 2 times a week, because I have to have a measurable.
Yes.
Okay.
It's good.
All right, we're back. So, Melissa, we're going to go a totally different direction. You know, the show's about advocacy. We've been talking about the employee and some of the challenges. Now we're going to talk about the employer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, Melissa, I do a lot of work for schools and professional development, and we talk a lot about how a teacher's role has changed in schools, and there's so much more responsibilities with kids. Well, I see the HR person's role as having a huge change, because now, with people's bottom lines changed, an HR person's now tasked with wellness and different wellness programs. An HR person's now tasking how to engage employees in benefits and perks and different things. So the HR person's role has really expanded. But unfortunately, the resources for HR haven't necessarily expanded. Mm-hmm. So my question for you is, you must run into a lot of people a lot of HR executives or CEOs who want to use a service like yours, but have some preconceived notions on why they shouldn't or can't. And if that's true, what are some of the things you're seeing that are holding people back from taking advantage of this kind of service?
Yeah, sure. So, one concern that I think is a valid one with HR professionals when they're working with agencies is that the whole process is going to get away from them, and things get kind of convoluted. And so, my message is, first of all, I don't recommend working with a multitude of agencies at once. Strategically picking the partners that really fit your program is really important. And then the other message that I have for HR professionals, I really feel for them, and I so admire those in the field, because it has expanded, and it's it used to be there's payroll and there's reporting and then planning a company party and all of that good stuff. And now it's like this huge retention and how do we compete as a company for the talent pool. And so the way I try to explain things to clients is that, I know a bit about HR. I've been in this business for 20 years, but I'm not an HR person. I'm a salesperson, really. I'm going to go out and my team and I are going to be championing, if I can say the word.
Benefits.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go ahead, yep.
Championing your company and telling your story and helping spread the word about you guys and attract, the people that we want to attract to you. So I think that understanding what recruiters do, third-party recruiters and HR professionals, how they can collaborate and work together. It's a partnership. It's not replacing something the HR individual should be, or quote unquote should be doing.
Well, Melissa, I have to say, I think you're selling yourself a little short, because a lot of the companies that you've worked with that I've spoken to really see you as an educator and as someone who provides a wealth of knowledge to help in their own departments. So when you say you're a salesperson, I see it as a much bigger role, even though your bigger point was you're not infringing on the HR role, which I get. Mm-hmm. What I want to ask you about, though, is you talked about picking a strategic partner and not just using multiple agencies. And I know from my previous company, I didn't have that attitude at all. I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm just going to get 3 or 4 different agencies because I only have to pay the one that finds the person. The more people out there searching for me, the better. So why is that a bad mentality? How does that come back to haunt companies?
Yeah, I think that it does it in a couple of ways. So from the agencies or the recruiter's standpoint, it's just like if someone were to go pepper the town with their resume. When there's that element of exclusivity, when I can call a person and say, I've been retained by this company to conduct a confidential search, and I'm calling you because it seems as though you have the the talents and abilities for this opportunity, and I think this manager would like to speak with you, that element of exclusivity has real value and immediately has credibility. So when a recruiter is working on filling a position and they know that other recruiters around town are working on the same thing, number one, they're going to be less motivated to work on it because somebody else could be scooping in with their candidate that they're, on the phone with. The resume could already be in the manager's hand. I've seen that happen. And worst case scenario, I've seen it happen where the resume comes from two different sources and then both are looking for their fee. And now you as the company are looking at, a candidate you want to hire, but if you do, you've signed contracts with two agencies and they're both holding their hand out. So that can be a real challenge. I think, more fundamentally, when you work with a strategic partner, they really work as an extension of your HR or recruiting team if you have a recruiting team. So they're much more dedicated and much willing to spend more time and more energy into investing into the process for you than what you would get, if you're working on a more transactional kind of method.
Well, it's interesting listening to you say that because I remember I've worked with other agencies in the past, and I call them what I refer to them as fast food agencies. So it's an agency I call up, and I need to fill a clerical position, and the person says, "Okay, send me the job description. What's your rate?" And it's kind of like, "Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. It's decided." What I've always liked about how you do business is you're really, and part of where I think supports your strategic partner comment is you're really trying to understand the culture of the company and how that person's going to fit in. You're trying to understand the vision and the core values of the company to make sure that that person, and we've talked a lot about how that relationship and really in depth getting to understand the company that you're trying to help grow is so critical. And I know that's a big asset for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the things that we see with companies struggling with retention or recruiting for that matter is what the ultimate root cause of the problem. So how do you help companies really understand why they're having those deficiencies in those areas?
So I go through a series of conversations with key stakeholders, and sometimes, what I like to do to really take a deep dive is just spend time in their work environment. I stumbled on this idea, maybe 15 years ago, when we were just really having some hard time figuring out, kind of getting a clear consensus from the various stakeholders. So I said, well, geez, I'm just going to go in and sit down in the department and job shadow, and that's when I discovered the value of getting a 360-degree view of really what's going on in the organization, and that's where we were able to start educating our customers in a more powerful way, because we're just feeding back to them what we're seeing, having fresh eyes coming from the outside, as well as what we're hearing from their employees on the inside.
And what are you finding, Melissa, when you do these assessments and job shadowing and spending the time with these companies? We know having an outside voice come in is so integral in really hearing and seeing what's going on. What are you finding that you're seeing and noticing that a lot of the higher ups at these companies are missing just because they're too involved in the process?
Yeah. I think that a lot of employees, communication is a big thing. A lot of employees
breakdowns in communication.
Yeah. So many times the it's not to say that the communications weren't put out, but for some reason, everybody communicates in a different way, right? And particularly today, it's hard to be able to communicate in a way that resonates in the same way and is powerfully for every single person. So I think communication is a big thing, that I hear from employees. That the processes, there's ambiguity about things. And
that's big, I think, is the ambiguity of the processes.
Yeah, and this person said I should do it this way, but then officially it's supposed to be that way. So that's a big one. I think I've seen that probably more than any other communication challenge out there.
Melissa, what about workload? I think a lot of times people take on a lot more than they can chew, and and then weaknesses and vulnerabilities happen in their performance. Do you think that's one of the things you tend to notice when you do the job shadowing?
Yeah. Particularly in less of the entry level and probably more into the mid level and upper levels, the workload. I don't feel like leaders are typically really in touch with how hard and how much burden is on the shoulders of some of the people that are reporting to them.
So, Melissa, when it comes to HR people who know they need you, know they want you, but are insecure because they think, well, I'm supposed to be doing this. This is part of my job. And if I go to the CEO and advocate for myself and say, we need this help, what are some of the things you're saying to the HR person and why they could and should feel comfortable with this?
Well, one, I would say we all know, I think it's a given, they could do this themselves. It's a matter, the knowledge, the tools, it really boils down to time in a lot of cases. And so that's when I like to have the conversation about return on investment. So, if you're looking at a position that is for example, a profit center position, a salesperson, and you've been looking for 3 months, and assumably if you don't change anything, it's going to continue to take, another month to, who knows, maybe 3 more months to get somebody in place. Well, now you've got a 6-month span of time where, you have a seat that's been vacant. How much does that cost? On the flip side, if it's a cost center kind of position, there's inefficiencies that you're paying for. So, kind of understanding what is the cost of the inefficiency that we have because we haven't filled this position, and what is it going to be if we don't fill it in another 30 to 60 days. And just knowing that cost, you can kind of back that up against what's it going to take for a recruiter or partner to help us fill this in 2 or 3 weeks, and it's pretty straightforward ROI decision making.
Okay, we'll be right back for our final segment with Melissa Glenny of Franklin Professional Staffing. Thank you for listening to I Communicate. We'll be right back.